Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
She announced it over breakfast like she was canceling a subscription. I'm leaving you, Marcus. Not, we need to talk, or this isn't working. Just that flat declaration while I spread marmalade on whole grain toast. The morning light filtering through our floor-to-ceiling windows, casting geometric shadows across the marble countertop she'd insisted we install. I looked up from the Wall Street Journal, took a sip of coffee, single-origin Ethiopian she'd bought to impress her yoga instructor, and said without missing a beat, "Saves me the trouble." Her coffee mug paused halfway to her lips. I watched her process this, watched the micro-expressions flicker across her face like slides in a presentation deck. Confusion first, then irritation, then something that looked almost like panic. "Excuse me?" Her voice had that sharp edge she used during client calls when someone questioned her strategy. I said it saves me the trouble. I folded the paper with the same deliberate precision I used for architectural drawings. "Do you need help packing?" Sophia set her mug down too hard. Coffee sloshed onto the white quartz, forming a small brown lake that neither of us moved to clean. She was wearing her power suit, the charcoal Armani that made her feel invincible during board meetings. But sitting there in our kitchen, designer armor and all, she looked smaller somehow. Diminished. That's it. 5 years together, and that's your response? I finished my toast. Chewed. Swallowed. What response were you expecting? She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again like a fish pulled from water. I could see her recalibrating, adjusting her strategy on the fly. Sophia was brilliant at that. Reading rooms, shifting tactics, finding angles. It's what made her devastating in marketing campaigns, and, I was learning, in relationships. "I thought you'd want to know why," she said finally. I stood, rinsed my plate in the sink. The warm water felt good on my hands. Outside, Seattle's morning fog clung to the sound like a gray blanket, but I could see patches of blue breaking through. It was going to be a beautiful day. "I already know why," I said, drying my hands with the linen towel she'd bought from that boutique in Pike Place. "Derek's younger. More flexible schedule. Probably tells you you're brilliant more often than I do." The silence that followed was exquisite. I'd been documenting their affair for 3 months. Credit card charges at hotels that didn't match her work travel, mysterious fitness sessions that ran 2 hours longer than any class she'd ever taken, the cologne smell that lingered in her hair after her Tuesday client dinners. I'm an architect. I notice details. I build careful structures from precise observations. When I turned around, she was staring at me like I'd just performed magic. "How did you?" "The Fairmont on Pine. March 15th. Charged to your personal card, not company." I straightened my tie, checked my watch, a vintage Omega my father gave me, not the flashy Rolex she'd bought me for Christmas. "You told me you were at that pharmaceutical conference in Portland." Her face went through several colors. Pale, then flushed, then somewhere between gray and green. "Marcus, I can explain." "No need." I picked up my briefcase, the one with her initials embossed on the leather handle. A gift from our 2nd anniversary when she still thought I might be worth keeping around. "I'll be at the office. Take whatever you need. Leave your key on the counter." I walked to the door, paused with my hand on the brushed steel handle. "Oh, and Sophia? When you're telling people about this, you might want to mention that you left me, not the other way around. I'd hate for there to be any confusion about who made the first move." The door closed behind me with a whisper-soft click. No slam, no drama. Just the sound of something ending exactly the way it was supposed to. She wasted no time launching her campaign. By Thursday, she deployed her full arsenal of character witnesses. Riley, her sister who worked in PR and understood the importance of narrative control. Jenna, her college roommate who'd never liked me anyway. Mika, the yoga instructor who'd been feeding her pseudo-spiritual nonsense about authentic living and following your bliss. I knew because I still followed their social media. Not obsessively, just the way I monitored construction sites, checking for cracks in the foundation, watching for signs of structural failure. Riley posted first, "Coffee with my sister." Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who love in silence. Hashtag sister support, hashtag new chapter. Then Jenna, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Maya Angelou knew. Supporting my girl through her journey. Hashtag truth-telling, hashtag female support. Mika was more direct. The universe removes people from your life for a reason. Trust the process. Trust yourself. Namaste. Hashtag spiritual growth, hashtag divine realignment. I screenshot them all. Not for revenge. I'm not vindictive, but because patterns fascinate me. The way people construct narratives, build emotional architecture from selected facts and convenient omissions. Sophia's version was becoming clear. I was emotionally unavailable, married to my work, unable to appreciate her vibrant spirit. She was the victim of my professional success, my quiet intensity, my failure to make her feel seen. It was a good story, well-crafted, with enough truth to make it believable. The only problem was the audience. Our mutual friends weren't buying it entirely. I could tell from the way conversations stopped when I entered rooms, the careful way people asked how I was doing, the suspicious absence of anyone taking sides. In good divorces, people choose camps immediately. The fact that no one was choosing suggested they sensed gaps in the narrative. I didn't fill them in. Silence, I've learned, is architectural too. It creates space for people to draw their own conclusions. While Sophia was building her public case, I was handling practicalities with the same methodical approach I used for major projects. I'd been preparing for this moment longer than she realized. The apartment in Belltown had been secured 2 months ago. Top floor of a converted warehouse, exposed brick, industrial windows, the kind of space that spoke to the man I was before I started trying to be the man she wanted. The lease was already signed, utilities transferred, furniture selected but not yet delivered. I'd separated our finances gradually, carefully, legally. Joint accounts became individual ones. Investments were quietly restructured. The condo, her dream home with its marble surfaces and designer fixtures, was entirely in her name, purchased with her family money. I'd insisted on it 3 years ago, claiming I wanted her to feel secure. Really, I'd wanted an exit strategy. My clothes fit into 6 boxes. My books, my drafting equipment, my few personal items, another 4. A decade of shared living reduced to 10 containers that fit easily in my BMW. I moved on a Tuesday while she was at her Pilates class with Derek. No drama, no confrontation, no tearful goodbye. I left my key on the granite counter next to a note. Thank you for the years we had. I hope you find what you're looking for. M. By evening, I was in my new place, surrounded by boxes but feeling lighter than I had in months. The space was mine again. No compromise colors, no decorative objects chosen by committee, no obligation to explain why I needed a drafting table when everything's digital now. I poured myself a Macallan 18, a bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion, and stood at the window watching the city lights reflect off Elliott Bay. My phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then started ringing. I turned it off without looking. She tried calling the office first, but my assistant, Margaret, had been with me for 12 years. She understood boundaries, discretion, and the art of polite deflection. I'm sorry, Ms. Reeves, but Mr. Chun is in meetings all day. May I take a message? Then came the texts. Marcus, can we please talk about this like adults? You can't just disappear. We have things to discuss. Your silence is childish. At least have the decency to explain. I know you're seeing these. This is ridiculous. Fine. Be that way. But people are asking questions, and I don't know what to tell them. I archived each one without responding. There's a special power in not reacting, in refusing to play the game by rules you never agreed to. It's not cruelty, it's discipline. Meanwhile, something more interesting was happening. Elena Vasquez had returned to Seattle. I learned this from Pacific Northwest Architecture Today, a trade publication I'd subscribed to since graduate school. There was a brief mention in their comings and goings section. Documentary filmmaker Elena Vasquez returns to Seattle after 3 years in Barcelona, supported by a MacArthur Fellowship to document the intersection of urban planning and community displacement. I stared at the paragraph longer than necessary. Elena. I hadn't thought about her in months, but seeing her name brought back memories of late nights in the graduate studio, conversations about the social responsibility of architects, the way she'd challenge every assumption until you either got angry or got smarter. She'd been the one that got away, though neither of us had called it that at the time. We were both too focused on our careers, too young to understand that timing matters as much as compatibility. When she got the opportunity to study community-centered design in Europe, I encouraged her to go. When I got engaged to Sophia 2 years later, she sent a congratulatory postcard from Barcelona. Build something beautiful, Marcus. You deserve it. I kept the postcard in my desk drawer, though I'd never examined why. Now she was back, and I was free. I reached for my phone, then stopped, pulled out my laptop instead, crafted a careful email. Elena, saw the mention in PNA today. Congratulations on the MacArthur. I'd love to hear about your work in Barcelona over coffee sometime. My schedule is surprisingly flexible these days. Marcus. I hesitated before hitting send. Not because I doubted the decision, but because I wanted to be sure of my motivation. Was this about Elena, or about proving to myself that I could move forward? Both, I decided, and clicked send. She responded within an hour. Marcus, what a wonderful surprise. I'd love to catch up. Are you still at Henderson and Associates? I'm staying in Capitol Hill while I look for something more permanent. Coffee tomorrow? There's a place called Victrola on Pine I've been meaning to try. The next morning, I found myself checking my reflection more carefully than usual. Not from vanity, but from curiosity. What would she see when she looked at me? The same serious graduate student she'd known 8 years ago? The polished professional I'd become? Or something new? A man in transition, shedding an old skin? I chose a simple black Henley instead of my usual button-down, jeans instead of slacks. The casual clothes felt foreign at first, then comfortable, like returning to a language I'd briefly forgotten how to speak. Victrola was crowded with the usual Capitol Hill mix: artists, tech workers, graduate students bent over laptops, people who'd turned coffee shops into offices. Elena was already there, seated at a small table near the window, and I recognized her immediately despite the years. Her hair was shorter now, a black bob that curved along her jawline. She wore a vintage leather jacket over a white t-shirt, jeans that looked lived in rather than designer, boots that suggested walking rather than posing. When she smiled, I remembered why I'd found her so magnetic in school. It wasn't calculation or performance. It was just Elena, completely present, completely herself. You look good, she said, standing to hug me. Different, but good. Different how? She tilted her head, considering. Lighter? Less, contained. I ordered an espresso. She had a core to do, and we fell into conversation as easily as if we'd seen each other last week instead of 3 years ago. She told me about Barcelona, about the communities she'd documented, about old buildings being transformed into spaces that actually serve the people who lived in them. It's not just about preservation, she said, leaning forward with the intensity one remembered. It's about adaptation, taking something old and making it work for new purposes, new lives. I found myself talking about projects I hadn't thought about in years. The community center I designed in Georgetown, the affordable housing development that won awards but never got built because the city council got cold feet. Work that mattered, before I'd gotten distracted by prestige projects and profit margins. You still have that light in your eyes when you talk about the work you love, she said. I was worried it might have gotten buried under all that success. It almost did, I admitted. I'd forgotten what it felt like to build something that mattered. I'm glad you reached out, Marcus. It's good to see you happy. How do you know I'm happy? Because you're laughing. Really laughing. I don't think I ever saw you do that when you were engaged. The observation hit deeper than intended. She was right. I'd been serious for so long, serious about my career, my relationship, my image, that I'd forgotten what genuine joy felt like. There's a documentary screening at SIFF next week, she said. Something about urban planning in Tokyo. Probably terrible, but we could make fun of it together. It's a date, I said, then caught myself. I know what you mean. Her smile was warm, uncomplicated. See you next week, Marcus. I watched her walk away, hands in her jacket pockets, completely comfortable in her own skin. For the first time in months, I felt something that wasn't relief or satisfaction or quiet vindication. I felt excited. Sophia discovered my relationship status changed the way most people do these days, through social media triangulation and the investigative powers of mutual friends. I wasn't hiding anything. Elena and I went to the documentary screening, then dinner, then a gallery opening in Pioneer Square. We walked around Green Lake on Saturday morning, had brunch at a place in Fremont that served extraordinary shakshuka. Normal dating activities, except they felt extraordinary because they were authentic. No performance, no agenda, just two people rediscovering each other. I didn't post about it, didn't announce it, didn't make any declarations. But Elena did share one photo, a shot of our hands holding coffee cups at Fremont Coffee Company, Her vintage ring next to my watch, morning light streaming through large windows. The caption was simple: good coffee, better company. She tagged me. I liked the photo. The algorithm did the rest. By Monday, I had 3 missed calls from Riley, a DM from Jenna asking if I was seeing someone, and a long, rambling text from Sophia that I deleted without reading. Margaret mentioned that Ms. Reeves had called the office twice, claiming it was about finalizing some paperwork. I told her I'd handle everything through my attorney. The truth was, I felt protective of what Elena and I were building. It was too new, too fragile, too important to be contaminated by Sophia's chaos. Whatever we were becoming deserved to develop in its own time, on its own terms, without being weaponized in someone else's narrative. But I also knew that isolation was temporary. Seattle's professional circles are smaller than people think. Eventually, our worlds would collide. The collision came at the opening of the new Contemporary Art Museum expansion, a project my firm had consulted on, an event Elena was covering for her documentary about cultural spaces in gentrifying neighborhoods. I'd invited her as my date, not thinking about who else might be there. I should have remembered that Sophia's company handled marketing for several cultural institutions. Should have anticipated that she'd be working the room in her element, networking with the precision of a heat-seeking missile. Elena and I were examining a particularly aggressive installation, twisted metal that was supposed to represent urban alienation but looked more like someone had crashed a Honda Civic into a sculpture, when I heard the familiar click of designer heels on polished concrete. Well, this is a surprise. I turned. Sophia stood 3 feet away, champagne flute in hand, wearing a dress I recognized, black, elegant, the one she'd bought for my company's holiday party last year. She looked good. She always looked good. But standing next to Elena, who was wearing a simple blue shift and silver jewelry she'd bought from an artist in Barcelona, Sophia looked like she was trying too hard. Hello, Sophia. I kept my voice neutral, pleasant, the way I'd greet any professional acquaintance. Her eyes moved to Elena, then back to me, calculating. And you are? Elena Vasquez. Elena stepped forward, extending her hand with easy confidence. I'm a documentary filmmaker. You must be Marcus's ex-wife. The word ex hung in the air like incense. I watched Sophia process it, watched her realize that this woman, this poised, accomplished, naturally beautiful woman, knew exactly who she was and wasn't intimidated. Yes, I am. Sophia's smile was razor-sharp. Though I have to say, Marcus, you move quickly. How long has it been? A month? 6 weeks, I said. But who's counting? Elena glanced between us with the observational skills of someone who'd spent years documenting human behavior. She wasn't uncomfortable. She was interested, like an anthropologist witnessing a ritual. How did you two meet? Sophia asked, and I could hear the subtext. How long has this been going on? Were you cheating too? Graduate school, Elena said easily. We studied together at UW. Lost touch when I moved to Barcelona, reconnected when I came back last month. The timeline was innocent, obvious, unassailable. Sophia's expression flickered, disappointment that there was no scandal to uncover, no moral equivalency to claim. Barcelona, she repeated. How artistic. It was incredible, Elena said, missing or ignoring the slight condescension. 3 years documenting how communities preserve cultural identity through architecture. I'm hoping to do similar work here now that Seattle's growing so rapidly. And you support that? Sophia asked me. All that advocacy work? It was a trap, elegantly laid. In our relationship, she'd often criticized what she called my do-gooder phase, pushing me toward more profitable projects, more prestigious clients. She was testing whether Elena represented a regression to idealism she'd successfully bred out of me. I think Elena's work is some of the most important happening in urban planning right now, I said. We need people who understand that buildings aren't just structures, they're community anchors. They shape how people live, how they connect, how they survive change. Elena looked at me with surprise and something warmer than professional respect. Sophia looked like I'd slapped her. Well, she said, recovering quickly. That's very noble. I hope it pays the bills. Actually, Elena said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, the MacArthur Fellowship covers expenses quite nicely. Plus, I sleep better at night knowing my work matters. The sentence was delivered gently, but it landed like a guided missile. Sophia had never won awards for her marketing campaigns, had never been recognized for anything beyond increasing client revenues. Her success was measured in dollars, Elena's in impact. A MacArthur Fellowship, Sophia repeated, as if testing the words for authenticity. How impressive. Marcus tells me you're in marketing, Elena said. That must be exciting too, helping companies reach their audiences. It was gracious, inclusive, the kind of bridge-building response that someone secure in themselves could afford to make. It also highlighted the difference between their work. Elena documented truth, Sophia manufactured desire. It pays extremely well, Sophia said, which wasn't really an answer to Elena's question, but was definitely an answer to the conversation we were actually having. I felt Elena's hand touch my elbow lightly. Not possessive, just present. A small gesture that said, I'm here. I'm fine. We can leave whenever you want. We should look at the rest of the exhibition, I said. Sophia, good to see you. Enjoy the opening. As we walked away, I heard Elena say quietly, she's beautiful. Yes, I said. And she knows it. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I stopped walking. Are you defending her? Elena considered this seriously. I'm observing her. There's a difference. She paused in front of a photograph, Seattle's skyline from the early 1960s, all low buildings and vast sky. She's scared. Scared of being replaced, of not matching, of being wrong about something fundamental. Elena tilted her head. I know that feeling. I've been wrong about fundamental things too. Such as, I thought you were still the same serious graduate student I remembered. All work, no joy. She smiled. I was wrong. You laugh now. You notice things that have nothing to do with your career. You order dessert without apologizing for it. She was right. I had been laughing more, paying attention to small pleasures, allowing myself to exist without constant productivity. Being with Elena was teaching me that success didn't have to mean optimization, that happiness could be as simple as good conversation and shared curiosity. So what did you think of her? I asked. I think, Elena said carefully, that she loved the idea of you more than she loved you. And I think she's just now realizing the difference. We continued through the exhibition in comfortable silence, but I kept thinking about Elena's observation. Sophia had fallen in love with my potential, my trajectory, my role in the life she wanted to build. I'd been supporting character in her vision of success, not a full person worthy of love for who I actually was. Elena, on the other hand, seemed interested in my thoughts, my questions, my process of figuring things out. She didn't want to improve me or redirect me. She just wanted to know me. It was a revelation worth savoring. The aftermath was predictable. Sophia's social media presence shifted from wounded dignity to subtle aggression. Photos of her looking dramatically contemplative with captions about knowing your worth and not settling for less than you deserve. Screenshots of inspirational quotes about strong women who don't need anyone's validation. Riley posted a particularly pointed one. Some people will never understand what they lost until they see you with someone who appreciates your value. Your loss, their gain. Hashtag level up, hashtag know your worth. I might have been annoyed if it wasn't so transparent. Sophia was building a narrative where she'd won by leaving me, where Elena was somehow a downgrade, where I was the one who'd lost out. The problem was, anyone with eyes could see I looked happier than I had in years. Elena found it fascinating from an anthropological perspective. She's creating a competing reality where the facts don't matter as much as the story. It's brilliant, actually. Marketing at its finest. Does it bother you? I asked. We were in my apartment, cooking dinner together, something I'd never done with Sophia, who preferred restaurants or catered events. Elena was making her grandmother's paella recipe while I handled prep work, and the whole scene felt domestic in a way that should have terrified me, but instead felt like coming home. Should it? She asked, stirring saffron into rice. I know what we have. I know what she threw away. Her opinion of me doesn't change either of those facts. I watched her work, confident, unhurried, completely present in the moment. No phone checking, no performance for social media, no anxiety about how the evening would look to other people. Just Elena, making dinner, being herself. Besides, she added with a grin, I won the MacArthur Fellowship. She can post all the motivational quotes she wants, but the evidence speaks for itself. That night, After dinner and wine and long conversations about everything from urban planning to childhood memories to the way light changes throughout the seasons, Elena fell asleep curled against my side. I lay awake for a while, listening to her breathe, thinking about the difference between love that demands you be something and love that lets you be yourself. Sophia had wanted me to be successful, impressive, worthy of her. Elena seemed to appreciate me as I was while encouraging me to become whoever I wanted to be next. It was a distinction worth protecting. 3 months later, I was invited to speak at a conference about sustainable urban development, exactly the kind of advocacy work Sophia had discouraged me from pursuing. Elena had suggested I submit a proposal based on our conversations about community-centered design, and the selection committee had chosen my presentation about affordable housing that actually served its residents. The venue was the convention center downtown, a space I'd helped design early in my career. Walking through the corridors I'd once sketched felt like encountering my younger self. Idealistic, passionate about making spaces that improved people's lives rather than just impressing other architects. Elena was there, of course, documenting the conference for her project. But so was Sophia. She appeared during the reception, working the room with her usual precision, networking with the kind of focused intensity that had made her successful in marketing. She'd cornered several city council members, 2 developers, and the conference organizer before she approached me. "Quite a change of direction," she said, gesturing toward the banner advertising my talk. "Housing is human infrastructure, designing for community rather than capital." "Not a change," I replied. "A return." "To what? Your graduate school idealism? I thought we'd agreed that phase was behind you." We hadn't agreed on anything. She'd decided, and I'd gone along with it because it seemed easier than arguing. The distinction was important. "I'm building the career I actually want," I said, "rather than the one someone else thinks I should want." Elena appeared at my elbow with 2 glasses of wine. She'd been across the room talking to a city planner from Portland, but she had perfect timing, a skill I was learning to appreciate. "The one you should want," Sophia continued, ignoring Elena entirely, "is the one that pays for the lifestyle you've become accustomed to. Unless you're planning to support both of you on documentary film grants and MacArthur money." It was cruel, calculated, designed to plant seeds of doubt about Elena's financial stability and my own priorities. The old me might have been defensive. The new me found it revealing. "Actually," Elena said pleasantly, "I've been offered a position at the University of Washington. They're starting a new program in community-centered urban planning, and they want someone who understands the intersection of architecture and social justice." This was news to me, and I felt a flash of surprise followed by pride. Elena had been considering several opportunities, but hadn't mentioned this one. "Congratulations," I said, meaning it completely. Sophia's expression shifted through several phases: surprise, calculation, recognition that Elena wasn't going anywhere, wasn't temporary, wasn't a rebound or a mistake. "How nice for you," she said finally. "Though I hope you don't expect Marcus to change his entire career trajectory to accommodate your principles." "Why would I expect that?" Elena asked. "Marcus is perfectly capable of making his own decisions about what kind of work matters to him." It was a simple statement, but it contained a fundamental difference in worldview. Sophia had always assumed that love meant negotiation, compromise, someone yielding to someone else's vision. Elena believed that love meant supporting each other's authentic choices. "Well," Sophia said, finishing her wine with a gesture that suggested the conversation was over, "I suppose we'll see how that works out." After she left, Elena turned to me with genuine curiosity. "Does she think I'm going to ask you to quit your job and become a full-time activist?" "She thinks everyone has an agenda," I said. "She can't imagine that you might just want me to be happy." "Is that what I want?" I considered the question seriously. "I think you want me to be fully myself. And it turns out that makes me happy." Elena smiled, the kind of smile that starts small and spreads until it reaches your eyes. "Good. Because fully yourself is exactly who I fell in love with." It was the first time either of us had used those words. They hung in the air between us, honest and unguarded and exactly right. "I love you too," I said. Across the room, Sophia was networking with a developer, but I caught her glancing in our direction. For just a moment, her professional mask slipped, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Not anger or calculation, but genuine regret. She'd had this She'd had someone who could love her completely, support her dreams, be a true partner in building a life. And she'd thrown it away for the excitement of a younger man with better abs and more flexible schedule. The look lasted only a second before the mask returned, but it was enough. For the first time since this whole thing began, I felt something like pity for her. Not because she'd lost me. I'd never been hers to lose, not really. But because she'd lost the opportunity to learn what love actually felt like when it didn't require performance or negotiation or constant validation. She'd saved me the trouble of leaving her, but in doing so, she'd cost herself the chance to discover who she might have become in a relationship built on truth rather than transaction. As Elena and I walked out together, her hand warm in mine, I realized that Sophia had been right about one thing. It was quite a change of direction. I was finally heading somewhere worth going. 6 months later, Elena and I moved in together, into a converted loft in Georgetown that we found through a community land trust, space that was beautiful and affordable and part of a project designed to keep artists and teachers and social workers in the city they served. We spent weekends at farmers markets and planning meetings, talking about how to build spaces that actually worked for human beings. Sophia, last I heard, was still with Derek. Still posting motivational quotes about knowing your worth. Still believing that the right person was someone who made you feel valuable rather than someone who saw your value and reflected it back. She'd saved me the trouble of leaving her, and I'd never been more grateful for anything in my life.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.